Hello, I'm Adam Green with No More News. I've done a ton of videos on my channel exposing Zionism and the Jewish Third Temple end times prophecy, and I've spoken a lot about Trump being a Zionist agent in videos like Banksta's Paradise featuring Donald Trump and the Donald Trump Jewish Temple prophecy. And just recently I got a tip from a No More News listener that really exposes Trump as a Zionist agent, and it was really mind-blowing to me that I had missed this, and it really sent me down a whole new rabbit hole and helped me learn some new things, some new pieces to the puzzle. So I'm going to take you guys down on that journey with me. We start here with this clip. It's Donald Trump on the David Letterman show in 1986. They're inside his office and they show what's on his wall. We'll go ahead and play that now.
All right, I have one more question and then we're out of here. It's the middle of a Friday afternoon. You didn't know we were coming.
Absolutely.
You said, come on up. How busy can you be?
I'm not busy. I have nothing to do. You know my truth? I have nothing to do. I wish I had more to do.
What would you be doing if you
I'll
could
go to
do it?
Louisville.
You should.
We'll do a couple of real estate deals in Louisville.
There's a spot over here down on the carpet. Look into that. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. All right, let's get out of here. Don't touch anything. Let's go. Let's keep going.
So they showed a quick shot of what's on his wall, and there was this plaque, this award on the wall with a tree and some Hebrew writing. And if you look a little closer, zoom in, you can't really see, it's blurry, but there's another picture of it online, and it's the Jewish National Fund Tree of Life Award to Donald Trump in recognition of his outstanding contributions to his city and to the real estate industry, strong humanitarian interests, and support of Israel, from Jacobson and Cohen. And this is Etz Chaim, that's what it says on there, and that's referring to the tree of life in the Garden of Eden. And Trump just did another video with Washington Post talking about his Jewish awards, and he talks about this award he got, the Tree of Life.
So these awards are given to me by the Jewish community for different things, and this is the Tree of Life, which is a very big award in terms of everything that I stand for. It means so much to me, and a lot of times I'll have friends of mine come in, Jewish, and they will see the Tree of Life and they'll say, wow, what a great thing. Likewise, right over here, this is the Shalom Humanitarian Award, and that was presented to me also. And these are different awards I've had over the years, for different things I've done.
And this is the Tree of Life, which is a very big award.
Notice as he says the Tree of Life, look at the symbol he makes with his hand. I find that interesting. The MAGA OK symbol.
In terms of everything that I stand for, it means so much to me. And a lot of times I'll have friends of mine come in, Jewish, and they will see the Tree of Life and they'll say, wow, what a great thing.
Wow, what a great thing. So a little bit more on this award he got, the Tree of Life Award. Go here to WikiWand, and it says List of Honors and Awards Received by Donald Trump. We go down here to Honors and Awards. 1983, he got the Tree of Life Award. It is the highest humanitarian award the Jewish National Fund presents to one individual or family each year in appreciation of their outstanding community involvement, their dedication to the cause of American-Israeli friendship, and their devotion to peace and the security, of human life. The award recognizes leaders of achievements and innovations in industry, government, and education. And that's from the Jewish National Fund. They are a group was founded in 1901 to buy and develop land in Ottoman Palestine, later the British Mandate for Palestine, and subsequently Israel and the Palestinian territories for Jewish settlement. So it was founded in 1901 to buy and develop land in the Ottoman Palestine for Jewish settlements. The JNF is a non-profit organization. List of honors and awards. See it on here too on Wikipedia. Same thing, Tree of Life Award. Jewish National Fund says that they've done a bunch of 240 million trees as they bulldoze Palestinian olive trees. So here's the Jewish National Fund. What's up with this organization giving Trump an award way back in 1983? It's a fund, huge charity, nonprofit for Israel. And here they're how it all started with a dream. Read this. There was Herzl, the founding father of Zionism. It says, it was the 4th day of the 5th Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland in 1901. And then Theodor Herzl, a Viennese journalist, was unwavering. It was time to take action, and he was determined that before the Congress came to an end, a national fund would be established. So literally, like, the Zionist Congress is who started and is behind this Jewish National Fund, and they're giving Trump awards way back in 1983. So Herzl's speech turned the delegates around, the motion passed, and the Congress resolved that a fund to be called the Jewish National Fund, quote, the fund shall be the property of the Jewish people as a whole. Herzl made the 2nd donation and his aide the 3rd, and with this, the dream of a national fund to be used to build the foundations of a Jewish state became reality. And then you can go on, I'll put the link in the description, but it goes on through all of the history. In the first decade of Israel's existence, land acquisition was not the Jewish National Fund's only concern. They played a central role in establishing the first modern Jewish city. So this is the founding of Zionism is giving Trump award way back in the early 80s. You can go through the whole history here. The JNF has been involved with all of it. Now, all the way up to present day. And Trump's got some other Kabbalah Tree of Life connections. We have his book, Trump, The Way to the Top. The best business advice I ever received. Here it says, one day when my Kabbalah teacher, Etan Yardini, asked how I was doing, I told him I needed a break. I was thoroughly exhausted, overwhelmed, and overworked. Etan then said, do you know what you should do? Blah, blah, blah. So I'm not sure exactly if this is Trump that's writing this or if this is somebody else's authored this and it was included in Trump's book. But either way, there's Kabbalah in Trump's book. It shows that he's connected to people that are into Kabbalah. KabbalahStudent.com says Trump will bring the Messiah this way. Breaking Israel News says Trump victory prophesied by Kabbalah, says mystical rabbi. Is Ivanka Trump getting into Kabbalah with red thread bracelets? So Ivanka's into Kabbalah as well. What is Kabbalah? Chabad.org. It says inside the Jewish practice breaths and inner wisdom, the soul of Judaism, we call it Kabbalah, meaning receiving. We'll get more into it. Kabbalah on Wikipedia. The most universal form adhered to in modern Judaism is Lurianic Kabbalah, and Isaac Luria is considered the father of contemporary Kabbalah. Lurianic Kabbalah was popularized in the form of Hasidic Judaism from the 18th century onwards. Isaac Luria, he's considered the father of contemporary Kabbalah. He was Ashkenazi, and they had the Ashkenazi synagogue for him. Side note on Ashkenazis is Jerusalem Post. Researchers find new risk factor for 2 psychiatric disorders in Ashkenazi genes. And Haaretz, scientists discovered gene that predisposes Ashkenazis to schizophrenia. But Chabad, you see here, Chabad Lubavitch, Orthodox Jewish Hasidic movement. Chabad is one of the world's best known Hasidic movements for its outreach. It is one of the largest Hasidic groups and Jewish religious organizations in the world. And their philosophy is Zohar and the Kabbalah, and frequently cited in Chabad works. So the Kabbalah and the Zohar and Ashkenazi are all Chabad. And you see here Chabad, their customs, their traditions and prayer services are based on Lurianic Kabbalah. And here's Chabad.org, Kabbalah Online. That's who same type of people cut from the same cloth as the Tree of Life award that Trump got. And here's Jared Kushner. He's a member of Chabad. He was vice president at Harvard in the club Friends of Chabad. Kushner's family gives $342,000 to Chabad. Still surprised about Jared and Ivanka's synagogue? No, we're not. Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner visit Lubavitcher's grave shortly before the election. That's the Chabad Lubavitch Rebbe Schneerson. Haaretz, Trump to endorse Chabad movement in event attended by Jewish leaders. Trump meets with Chabad rabbis in Oval Office. And here's Jerusalem Post. A Chabad house in Long Island becomes a fulcrum in the Mueller probe. Cohen is connected to Chabad. Felix Sater is connected to Chabad. as well as many others, including Putin, Politico, the happy-go-lucky Jewish group, that's Chabad Lubavitch, that connects Trump and Putin. Putin's chosen people is Orthodox Jewish sect, Chabad Lubavitch, with Beryl Lazar, who says that ties with Israel have never been closer, says Russian chief rabbi, talking about Russia. And we have, it's also called Putin's rabbi, I think, somewhere. Yeah, it's called Putin's rabbi. And Michael Jackson is connected to Kabbalah as well. He's friends with Rabbi Shmuley Botek, and they had a warm relationship. They had a charity together to promote a Heal the Kids campaign, and they, quote, used to have him over for Shabbat dinners. At one point, the Prime Minister Ariel Sharon visited Michael at Shmuley Botek's house. And Shmuley Botek is 50 most influential rabbis in the United States 3 years in a row. He's an author of Kosher Sex and Kosher Jesus. He was introduced to Michael in 1999 by Uri Geller, who is an Israeli illusionist. And this rabbi stood behind Michael Jackson even after his children's sexual abuse accusations. There he is, Rabbi Shmuley. And here he is writing in Jerusalem Post that Shmuley Botek, he writes, "The Rebbe's purpose was to bring Moshiach, the Messiah, which of necessity involves the Jews become a light to the nations." This is the theme of Michael's music. It's like the Chabad Lubavitcher was using him.
I just was a huge fan. I thought he was, and I loved the music that he wrote, which was all about healing the world.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
All about healing the world. And JTA talks about Michael Jackson. It says, despite everything, Heal the World should still generate a good amount of goosebumps because it's basically a more tear-jerking version of Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam here at Chabad.org is fix the world. It means that it's their supremacist, entitled view that it's their responsibility to interfere in all the Goyim nations and tell them what to do so that the world can be healed. So Tikkun Olam means repairing the world, which is what they are here to do. That was Michael Jackson's message. And another foundational principle of Chabad Lubavitch is rebuilding the third temple. Here's an article, May It Be Rebuilt, and rebuilding your temple and having their Messiah rule the world from the temple. They can't wait for him to come. They even chant, "We want Mashiach now."
You want Mashiach now.
And then they get real into it. They sing it with the children too. Just imagine Kushner in the crowd singing "We Want Mashiach Now." And they want the temple. Here's a little model of the temple that they're giving the Rebbe. And this is the Rebbe meeting with... listen to what they say about the temple here. I present it as a Hanukkah gift. I hope the temple will soon be rebuilt, and this will remain a model. Amen. May it be speedily built in our time. May it be speedily. That is the main thing. And now here's the same sentiment. The Rebbe, Chabad Lubavitch Schneerson, talking to Benjamin Netanyahu. Since we last met, many things have progressed. Many things have progressed. What hasn't changed, however, is that the Moshiach still hasn't come. So do something to hasten his coming. We're doing. Apparently it's not enough. Since many hours have already passed today and he's still not here. They're very impatient, but there are still a few hours left in the day, so try still for today. Yes. So this is what do we have here? This is so here's Netanyahu talking about his connection to Kushner, and also here's Trump's dad. Here, later years in death, during the 1980s, Fred Trump became friends with future Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who was the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations in Manhattan. And Trump is also connected, or Netanyahu is also connected to Kushner going way back.
Can I reveal, Jared, how long we've known you? Well, he was never small. He was always big. He was always tall. But
the relationship between Israel and America is stronger than ever, and we really thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for his leadership and his partnership.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you saw that when Bibi slept in Jared Kushner's bed, Netanyahu's been close friends with the Kushners, staying at their house when he traveled to New Jersey and New York. And this is all about the Third Temple and end times prophecy, and Trump is their guy. That's why the Israeli group mints Trump coin to honor Jerusalem recognition. It's an educational organization focused on the Jewish temple, and they're making a coin for Trump in honor of the Jerusalem embassy move. Israeli group mints coin bearing Trump's image with Cyrus and the temple on the back. It's called the Temple Coin by the Mikdash Center, Educational Center.
We are very happy to announce that the Mikdash Educational Center just produced a new Cyrus Trump Temple coin. This special coin was produced and minted for the 70 years of the independence of the State of Israel, and to honor and praise President Donald Trump, who promised, but not only promised, also fulfilled this promise, and next week will move the American embassy to Jerusalem. From these donations are going to be used for the rebuilding and education of the Third Temple. The temple belongs to everybody, to the Jewish nation, but also to the whole world. In 3 languages, in Hebrew, in English, and in Arabic. So we're starting with the people of Israel, we're starting maybe with the Trump base, but I'm sure that maybe through Trump, everybody will understand not how Donald Trump is important, but how important Jerusalem and the temple is for the whole world.
You gotta love that. We're starting with the Trump base. All you MAGA America firsters, you're being used.
This president, he understood when nobody else understood. He understood we're not talking politics. We're not talking politics. We're talking Torah. We're talking prophets. That's what it's all about. And once we understand it, and I think he understood it, maybe he can't say it, but he knows. And he's pushing us. He's pushing us. And the whole world is there.
Can I ask,
where are you from?
England.
England.
RSC YouTube channel.
Can I ask, you said earlier that some of the temple is ready to be built in a prefab state. Is that true? Do you have part of the temple already built?
And it's exactly what we said before. It's not enough to pray for the temple. And if you pray for something, you have to believe. And to show that you believe something, you have to do.
Self-fulfilling
prophecy. So that's
prophecy.
why we have a lot of vessels made. We have a big altar that was made. We have programs, and yes, also some of the pieces of the temple, like this blocks itself, can be just transferred exactly like the model we see over here, 15 times bigger than this, and the temple can be built.
Temple can be built. They are very serious. This isn't just a fringe thing. This is the mainstream. Here's Haaretz. Temple Mount extremists making inroads in both Knesset and Israeli government. Another one. The Temple Mount has gone mainstream. Haaretz. The Israelis who take rebuilding the Third Temple very seriously. Yatam. Jews nearly succeeded. They've tried to blow up the Dome of the Rock before, too, and do this. Yatam Jews nearly succeeded in 1984 Temple Mount bomb plot. And they're brazenly, when our ambassador goes to visit, they present him with a huge photograph that has the Dome of the Rock removed and the Third Temple photoshopped on. In Jerusalem, they sell art like that everywhere. International Business Times. Israel, Al-Aqsa Mosque will be replaced by Jewish temple, claims the housing minister, Uri Ariel. The Israeli housing minister says the Jewish temple will replace the mosque. Trump will start the end of the world, claim evangelicals who support him. Half of evangelicals support Israel because they believe it is important for fulfilling end times prophecy. At times of Israel, they're laying the groundwork for the Third Temple in Jerusalem. The Temple Mount has gone mainstream. The Third Temple will be rebuilt. And this is all part of a bigger plan that's been going on for a long time. Here is the Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, who said he was a proud Bolshevik from the Soviet Union. And in his interview in 1962, his prediction for the future of the world, he says, quote, In Jerusalem, the United Nations, a truly United Nations, will build a shrine of the prophets to serve the federated union of all continents. This will be the seat of the Supreme Court of mankind to settle all controversies among the federated continents as prophesied by Isaiah. And here we have breaking Israel news. They say that the spokesperson for the Sanhedrin, that's the 70 top rabbis in Israel, he says that any official body that adopts these UN laws will be brought to justice in the International Court of the Sanhedrin. So they believe they have jurisdiction, not the UN. The origins of the UN was rooted in biblical concept of 70 nations, the Sanhedrin leader Weiss said. In the very beginning, they related to this by establishing the state of Israel, but then they turned their back on Jerusalem, meaning the UN. And then now the Sanhedrin is working with leaders of several nations to establish a new international body based in Jerusalem on biblical values that will replace the UN, just like Prime Minister Ben-Gurion said. A truly united nations that will be the Supreme Court of mankind, led by the Sanhedrin and their Messiah, the Moshiach. Here is, and they're going to do this several ways, through trade and through advanced technology. Here's Vice, How Israel Rules the World of Cybersecurity, and Council on Foreign Relations, Israel as a Cyber Superpower. RT, they want to turn all this cyber hacking, turn the curse into a blessing. Netanyahu wants a UN of the internet. He says, quote, "The biggest challenge we face with the cyber world is protecting the privacy and security of the public. There could be a serious breach," he said, using fear to sell their takeover. He says there should be a sort of UN for the internet, a coalition of the leading companies in the cyber world. And in my opinion, Israel is the most advanced, he added. I've done several videos on this before. It's in my documentary available on nomorenews.org. And the other way they're going to do this is with trade. Here is the Jerusalem Post. Israel in the unexpected New World Order. It's not unexpected at all. It's been planned for a long time. In the new and surprising economic world order, Israel could gain a degree of wealth not seen since the days of King Solomon. Remember that, King Solomon. The project is called the Belt and Road Initiative. It took $7.5 trillion to develop, and a bunch of countries have signed on with it. And Jerusalem Post, China's Belt and Road Initiative, what's in it for Israel? It says the initiative is, quote, the new game in town for China and perhaps Israel. When it comes to the Belt and Road, it is the new game in town. Economic immigration on a scale that hasn't been previously seen. It'll be the new world economy. This article gets into how they're going to possibly collapse the dollar and have a world cryptocurrency, and Israel be in charge of all of it. The Jerusalem Post says one belt, one road, Israel's role in China's flagship policy. Their role, historically, the land of Israel has been a strategic link between Asia, Europe, and Africa, and now is the time to revive that role. And here's an old map showing Jerusalem at the center of the three continents. And remember, Solomon's Temple, they're going to have wealth not since the days of Solomon Temple. This is another tip a No More News listener sent me. This is from New York Times Time Machine, and the date is September 22nd, 1912. And title, Solomon's Temple, Scheme of Freemasons and Opinions of Jews on Rebuilding. September 14th, London. It says, the scheme of the Freemasons is to rebuild the Temple of Solomon at Jerusalem has aroused much sentimental interest in Jewish quarters here, and much doubt is expressed as to whether the project will ever be realized. Some 2 years ago, it was announced that Chester had decided to form a lodge of research to meet at Jerusalem and to be known as the Lodge of King Solomon's Temple. Its members were to be drawn from all parts in the world, but in view of the unsettling state of affairs the prevailing in the Turkish Empire, the lodge was consecrated in the province of Chester and met under the jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge of England. So they wanted to have it in Israel, but because of the politics there at the time, the Turkish Empire was ruling, they couldn't do it. So they built it in England. At any time, an announcement such as this could not have failed from its very character to arouse the deepest interest throughout Jewry. Whether members of the craft or not, that's Masons or not, but coming as it has within hail of the solemn New Year, when the thoughts of Jewish people naturally revert to the past history of their nation, it has struck a far deeper note than it might otherwise have done. As to intended use of the projected temple, details are necessarily incomplete, but however generous in the financial support that has been placed at the disposal of the promoters of the scheme, however difficult to convince the Jews that even modern arts and crafts can reproduce the stately and splendor of the original temple, a temple that is considered by some to have been exaggerated. The scheme appears in one respect to anticipate the yearnings of the pious Jew who is devotions, so they pray daily for the restoration of the Jerusalem, and incidentally the rebuilding of the temple. Their prayer is, O dwell in the midst of thy city of Jerusalem, as thou hast spoken, and speedily establish the throne of David therein. O build it speedily in our days, a structure of everlasting frame. It would seem that after all, this part of nation's hope may be realized but through an alien agency, the Masons. But the Zionists, that section of the Jewish people who have striven for years to build up a Jewish national life in Palestine and make the Holy Land once more the home of the scattered ones of Israel, by the Zionists, through that agency, by the Zionists, that section of Palestine, did I already read? Okay, no. By the Zionists, that section of the Jewish people who have striven for years to build up a Jewish national life in Palestine and make the Holy Land once more the home of the scattered ones of Israel. The project of rebuilding Solomon's temple has been received with mixed feelings. They are, on their part, are doing much more the regeneration of Palestine. They are cultivating the land, establishing industries on sound footing, and making the country to blossom as the rose. Yet the religious aspect of Zionist work is such that for the rebuilding of the temple to be undertaken by outside agencies, as if it were a mere meeting hall or desirable mansion, jars horrible upon their sensitive feelings. The question, moreover, has been asked by intelligent Gentiles whether the temple, if and when constructed, would be retained by the Freemasons for their own use or handed over to the Jewish people to enable them, as one correspondent suggests, to restart their ancient sacrifices, sound footing, making sacrifices. Been intelligent Gentiles. Okay, we're all over the place. All over the place. Here we go. Okay, so that's that. New York Times talking about Masons wanting to rebuild the temple. Now we have Morals and Dogma, written by Albert Pike. You see the Illuminati, 33, all-seeing eye, double-headed eagle. Albert Pike wrote that all truly dogmatic religions have issued from the Kabbalah and returned to it. Everything scientific and grand in the religious dreams of all the Illuminati, Jacob Bohm from Swedenborg, Saint Man, and others, is borrowed from the Kabbalah. All the Masonic associations owe to it their secret and their symbols. So all religions and all Masons are all Kabbalah, is what Albert Pike says. And here we have in Israel the Masonic all-seeing eye pyramid with the G and the compass and the two pillars. And we have the all-seeing eye pyramid and the Star of David or Seal of Solomon symbolism in their birthright Israel, which is the Jews leaving diaspora to make Aliyah and come back to Israel. And we have the Seal of Solomon, the inverted triangle, six-pointed star. And this rabbit hole got me into Tex Mars and this documentary he made called Masonic Lodge over Jerusalem. I'm going to play a couple minutes of this. He goes over a lot of information showing how closely linked Freemasonry and the Kabbalah and Judaism are.
Freemasonry, is it Jewish? That it is comprised almost virtually of Jews? Well, one thing is for sure, it is controlled, I believe, behind the scenes by high-level Jewish interest. Publication that came out called Women's Voice. And back in 1953, they had a feature article called the B'nai B'rith's Clause. Now, the B'nai B'rith is a Jewish Masonic lodge. headquartered out of New York City, but with worldwide influence. In fact, even the Pope of Rome invited the B'nai B'rith members to the Vatican and met with them, and I have a picture of that. But notice also this headline in Women's Voice. It says, Freemasonry is jewelry. In other words, if you're a Freemason, you're likely to be a Jew. I've noticed as I've gone around the United States and visited many Masonic lodges and, of course, the House of the Temple of Washington, D.C., I've noticed that the prominence and the predominance of the Jewish six-pointed star, the Star of David that you see on the flag of Israel, it seems to be everywhere in Masonic lodges, and there's a reason for that. Here's an article from the CDL report some years ago. It said, Freemasonry is Jewish, say the Jews. So we're not talking about, defaming or slandering Jews. They say that this is true. In the book Anti-Semitism by Bernard Lazare, he says there were Kabbalistic Jews around the cradle of Freemasonry, as certain rites still in existence prove conclusively. They were at the very cradle, at the origins, at the beginning of Freemasonry. Now, Rabbi Isaac Wise, way back in 1855, had this to say. He stated, Freemasonry is a Jewish establishment whose history, grades, official appointments, passwords, and explanations are Jewish from beginning to end. Brother, so-called Masonic brother Rudolf Klein of the Grand Lodge of Saxony in Germany was asked about the Jewish rituals that are conducted in Masonic lodges. And he said, Jewish ritual is customary and valid in all Freemasonic lodges of the world. In the Jewish Tribune newspaper, way back in 1927 in the United States, we read, Freemasonry is based on Judaism. Eliminate the teachings of Judaism from the Masonic ritual, and what is left? In a French publication in 1928 called Le Symbolisme, it says the important duty of a Freemason must be to glorify the Jewish race. So over and over again we see that Judaism is Freemasonry. This is an excerpt from the book The Rays and the Initiations by Alice Bailey. Now she's the founder of Lucis Trust, which is a combination name, by the way, of Lucifer and Isis. Lucis Trust. And her book, entitled The Rays and the Initiation, way back in 1960, one of the major New Age texts available at all New Age and occult bookstores, she on page 418, she states that the time has now come in preparation for the New Age for certain changes to be worked by Masons with spiritual understanding. She mentions the present Jewish color of Freemasonry. She says the Blue Lodge degrees, that's the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry, are entirely Jewish in phrasing and wording. She says even the higher degrees are permeated with Jewish names and words. Now Alice Bailey, like her mentor, Helena Blavatsky, who wrote The Secret Doctrine and founded the Theosophy Society, was a co-Mason, a woman Mason. Now, this is from a book sent to me from Greece, and some of the Christians over in Greece have been exposing this. I'm sorry you can't read the Greek title of this book, but inside it was a chart from the United States, and I think this is most fascinating. If you'll look at this very carefully, this is from a jewelry store in New York City. Now, it's Kirschenbaum and Son Wholesaler Jewelries on 78 Canal Street, New York to New York. This is probably about 30 years old. It says that this is a chart of the most important Masonic emblems. And from on the right-hand side, beginning after the Blue Lodge with the 4th degree, Secret Master, going all the way up to the 32nd degree, they have the list of names of the various Masonic degrees, the rituals and the degree that you are awarded if you pass the initiation, exercise, drama, and test for that degree. And it shows very clearly, for example, that most of the names have a Jewish influence. There is the Knight of the Brazen Serpent, the Prince of the Tabernacle, Chief of the Tabernacle. There's the Prince of Jerusalem. I mean, how more direct can you be? If you've got the if you've worked up to the 16th degree in Freemasonry, you'll be awarded the Prince of Jerusalem title. In October 1993, in the La Repubblica, that's an Italian newspaper, one of the most respected daily newspapers in Italy, La Repubblica, October 1993, was an article entitled Israel, the Pact Between Politicians and Masons. Fascinating, isn't it? It reported on a gala 40th anniversary celebration in Jerusalem of the founding of the Great Lodge of the State of Israel of ancient and accepted Freemasons. It says the ceremony was attended by the mayor of Jerusalem, Teddy Kollek, as well as the chief rabbi, Israel Meir Lau. Here's what the mayor of Jerusalem now, told the gathering of Masons. He said, quote, "You do a great honor to Jerusalem. This is natural," said Mayor Kollek, "considering that King Solomon was the great builder of the temple, which is at the roots of the Masonic idea, and that his workmen were the first Masons." Rabbi Lau, now remember, he's the chief Jewish rabbi for the whole nation of Israel. He stated this, he said, quote, "The principles of Freemasonry are all contained in the book of books of the Jewish people." It was noted that there were 4,000 Israeli Freemasons, and they were divided into 76 different lodges. I went on the internet and researched this subject. I found, for example, that there is even in Jerusalem a Grand Lodge of Jerusalem. Here, for example, is volume 2 of the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. On page 753, there is a very interesting illustration, piece of artwork of the Masonic Lodge of Jerusalem. This picture of this lodge of the Freemasons in the country of Palestine can be dated back 1,700 years. 1,700 years. Ask me, was I aware of the location of what appears to be possibly even a secret lodge in Jerusalem? And I was not fully aware of it at the time. Now I have been doing a lot of research on it. He said, "I'm going to send you the pictures that I took when I made one of my trips to Israel, and you'll find it very fascinating." He said, "I visited in a place that not many Christians go to, the Cave of Zedekiah." Now here is a picture showing the Cave of Zedekiah. It looks like a very forlorn and mysterious place up above this little bus here. And by the way, here is the entrance to the cave. And let me give you a little closer shot of the entrance of the cave. Okay? You can actually visit this place now, although they will not let you into the Masonic lodge. Way deep inside the tunnels of this place, there is a Masonic lodge. They won't let you in that, of course. But they went inside this. But deep, deep within, they began to get narrower and narrower. And then finally they came to a door. And this door was locked, and it was padlocked. And my friend asked the guide, "What is that inside there in that room?" It was a huge room or cavern inside. And he said, "That is the Freemasons' Hall. And once a month," he said, "the Grand Lodge meets there. These Masons meet under the earth, deep down in Zedekiah's cave." And then he looked and he found this, the amazing thing. He found this plaque on the wall, evidently in Hebrew and English, that told a little bit about the Freemasons' Hall. The Masons, the Masonic Lodge, actually meets deep under the earth in the Cave of Zedekiah. Well, how appropriate for Freemasons. Here is the $1.
Before we move on to the dollar bill, I want to pause there and go back. You remember the article I was reading from the New York Times a second ago? This one here. Solomon's Temple, scheme of Freemasons and opinions of Jews on rebuilding. And it talks about how they weren't able to do it in Israel, but they did it in England. Well, here it is. There's pictures of it all over the place. Here is the Lodge of King Solomon's. King Solomon's Temple, 3464. There's back in 1912, and there it is today. Looks like the double eagle type symbolism. And you can talk about their conception. This is the conception of the Lodge of King Solomon. And we have a old photo of it or drawing of it. And we have something highlighted down here. It says, the conception of the Lodge of King Solomon's Temple. It was during the tour, Thompson met Freemasons living in Jerusalem and discussed the possibility of founding a lodge there, but they weren't able to, so they had to do it in England instead. And that's what it looked like in 1912. King Solomon's Temple. Okay, back to Tex Mars, and it's almost wrapped up. You guys got to watch his whole documentary, Masonic Lodge over Jerusalem. It's a lot of incredible information. I'll put the link in the description below.
Here is the $1 bill, and on it you'll see on the right-hand side here the symbol, the eagle of the United States. Notice the Jewish influence, though. Did you know that above the eagle on our $1 bill is found the Star of David? Very carefully and craftily constructed. 13 stars in the form of a Star of David. Then, of course, over on the left-hand side, you see the pyramid with the all-seeing eye and the words Novus Ordo Seclorum on this side of the dollar bill. And there again, the Masonic symbol. Both the Jewish Star of David and the pyramid are found on the U.S. $1 bill.
So it's really not debatable. It's indisputable that Freemasonry is all based on the Kabbalah and Judaism, and they're all connected. Here is True News talking about this issue, how the Kabbalah is what connects them all.
The Christian Zionists and the Kabbalist Zionists, they're both Zionists. All right? And I think both of them are Kabbalist Zionists, to be honest with you. Okay, Kabbalahism, which is Jewish witchcraft. Freemasonry, what else? The Knights Templar.
Knights of Malta.
Knights of Malta.
What's the one thing that links all three together?
Kabbalah.
Kabbalah.
Supernatural, esoteric wisdom, whatever you want to call it.
Secret knowledge of Babylon.
Right.
Mysteries.
Mysteries. Kabbalah mystic rabbis telling Jews and American Christians that the man in the White House was put there by God to prepare the way of the Messiah.
Yes.
They're not expecting Jesus Christ. They reject Jesus Christ. These people are going to worship the man of perdition.
Yes.
Rick Wiles and True News are doing a great job exposing Christian Zionism and Israel's tech takeover. They covered Talpiot. They've been covering a lot of great topics. So sub them and recommend them to any Christian Zionists you know as well. So next up, where do the Rothschilds come into all of this in the temple? Well, earlier than you might imagine. Here is the Temple Institute website, and where they have written here that the attempts to rebuild in modern times, it talks about these rabbis who were behind this movement, and one of the rabbis, Kalisher, a leading figure in the effort, turned to writing greatest Jewish philanthropist of the age, Baron Asher Anchel Rothschild, who commanded the respect of all the world's royalty. Kalisher suggested that he offered to purchase the entire land of Israel at a high price from the king of Egypt, who ruled over the Holy Land at the time. The land itself was barren and desolate, not true. Kalisher also suggested an alternative possibility in the event that the first one should be rejected, to request the minimal purchase of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. the rabbi explains at great length how the renewal of the temple services will lead to the mass immigration of the Jewish people from the lands of their oppression, resulting eventually in the settlement of the entire land of Israel. So this rabbi that wanted to rebuild the temple reached out to Rothschild, to His Excellency the Rothschild, all the way back in 1836, over 100 years, 110 years before Israel was founded. The Rothschilds were being contacted and asked by rabbis to rebuild the temple. Now, this is 1836, a few years later. This is from Dan Dick's Press for Truth. He found an old article written about about the Rothschilds rebuilding the temple and having all the wealth of the world there.
This is a Niles Weekly Register, and bear in mind, this was printed in 1829. I'm going to very carefully open this up because, as I said, this is an original document from 1829. And here is the article. I'll read it to you now. Jerusalem. There is a report that the Rothschilds have purchased Jerusalem. We see nothing improbable that in the pecuniary distress of the Sultan, he should sell some part of his dominions to preserve the rest, or that the Rothschilds should purchase the ancient capital of their nation. They are wealthy beyond desire, perhaps even avarice, and so situated is quite reasonable to suppose that they may seek something else to gratify their ambitions that shall produce most important effects. If secured in the possession, and which may be brought about by money, they might instantly, as it were, gather a large nation together, soon to become capable of defending itself and having a wonderful influence over the commerce and the conditions of the East, rendering Judea again the place of a deposit of the large portion of the wealth of the ancient world.
Just like Solomon, right?
To the Sultan, the contrary is of no great value, but in the hands of the Jews, directed by such men as the Rothschilds, what might it not become, and in a short period of time? The Sultan is in great difficulty. Baron Rothschild was proceeding to Constantinople, and a second rebuilding of the temple is not among some of the most strange things expected in these strange times by some of the Jews.
So there you go. And that was, that was in 1829, and this one was 1836. So this article was written even before Rothschild was sent the letter to rebuild. So it was probably going on at least 1829 or before. And more on the Rothschilds, of course, that all came to be because the whole Balfour Declaration was written to the Rothschilds, and that was a huge step, one of the biggest steps in Jewish history, according to Lord Jacob Rothschild.
Possibly the most famous letter in modern Jewish history, and it begins with 3 words: Dear Lord Rothschild. Why was it that this letter was sent by the Foreign Secretary to your great-uncle Walter? And here it is, the Balfour Declaration. What do you feel when you see it here?
I've genuinely felt it's one of the most extraordinary moments in the history of the Jewish people.
It's one of the most extraordinary moments in the history of the Jewish people. I'm Lord Rothschild. It's the most marvelous thing that's ever happened.
People, if you think it took 3,000 years to get to this.
Took 3,000 years for the Rothschilds to get their Israel and their plan to rebuild the temple. The Rothschilds were instrumental in the early settlements of Israel. It's called Bailu. It stands for some kind of acronym, but it was a movement whose goal was the agricultural settlement of the land of Israel, and it was funded. They sought help from Baron Edmund James de Rothschild, who provided funding that led to the establishment of the local wine industry. So the Rothschilds were there every step along the way to create Israel. Here's the Rothschilds, painting of them. They funded and designed the Supreme Court of Israel, like Ben Gurion said, the Supreme Court of mankind, but there'll probably be a new one. That'll be the temple. And you can see here at the Supreme Court, we have in the courtyard the all-seeing eye Masonic symbolism temple. All-seeing eye standing up above. Rothschilds are behind that. And also with the settlements, we got Jared Kushner failed to disclose he led a foundation funding illegal Israeli settlements. So Rothschilds and Kushner. The Supreme Court and the Rothschild Boulevard is like the main street in Israel, in Tel Aviv. Rothschilds are on the shekels over in Israel. And you guys have heard of the Kalergi plan before. The writer Kalergi, he wrote about all the non-Jewish races are mixing to be a mixed Goyim race. And then European Jewry will be the spiritual nobility of Europe, a new race of nobility by the grace of spirit. The Jewish people have been refined and educated into a future leader nation through this artificial selection process. So, and of course, Kalergi was friends with Baron Louis de Rothschild, talking about the nobility race of Israel, the chosen ones. And the Rothschilds are also heavily connected to Chabad. We have the Rothschild family, a secret fortune, Chabad.org. Talks about the Rothschild family. It says, most famous for their great wealth, Amschel Rothschild was a very religious family, several members of which were rabbis. His father, Amschel Moses Rothschild, who died a year after Amschel became bar mitzvah, had hoped that his son would become a rabbi. So the Rothschild patriarch was supposed to be a rabbi. Instead, he became one of the world's greatest financiers, yet remained strictly religious and humble, and Jews everywhere could speak with great pride of him. And then we have Chabad.org, the father of the Rothschilds. It talks about how he was completely honest and pride in his Jewishness, and he was admired even by kings and princes and the nobility. We have Manshel Enshel. Okay, so this is a story about him as a boy. It said, a prince came up to Rothschild and said, if you would accept my religion, I would gladly appoint you to a high position in my government when I become ruler, meaning non-Jewish religion. Rothschild responded, that is out of the question, answered Meyer Anschel. Quote, I will never give up my faith for anything in the world, he concluded proudly. So that's the Rothschilds. Also, we have Chabad.org, Rothschilds, The Secret to Success. A little pyramid stuff there too for Passover. And we have Oxford Chabad Society serving Oxford Jewish students. Chief Rabbi of Russia, Berel Lazar, that's Putin's rabbi. Well, he gave a speech, and tonight we are also honored to be hosting the Honorable Nathan Rothschild, who is here with us tonight as a guest of honor. Rothschild is Chabad Lubavitch guest of honor, and Putin's rabbi, Berel Lazar, says that his claim to fame is actually being Rothschild's friend. How about that? And Trump's connections to the Rothschild, as a document in Banksta's Paradise featuring Donald Trump, the New York Times, Donald Trump's business decisions in the 80s nearly led him to ruin, and his comeback was questioned. Art of the Spin. Trump bankers question his portrayal of a financial comeback. How did he come back? He owed $4 billion in the beginning of 1990 with 70 banks he owned, with $800 million personally guaranteed by his own assets. So who bailed him out? Well, LA Times, meet Wilbur Ross, who once bailed out Trump in Atlantic City and is now his pick for Commerce Secretary. That's a quid pro quo. And Wilbur Ross, who is he? Commerce Secretary. Ross embarked on a strategy that helped Trump avoid personal bankruptcy that could have derailed his unlikely trajectory from real estate mogul to reality television star to president-elect. Ross spared Trump when Trump was heavily in debt in the Taj Mahal. And we have New York Times. Trump enlists help for Taj Mahal plan. He hired Securities Corporation and Rothschild Inc. to bail him out. Wilbur L. Ross, Rothschild Inc. And it said here, Ross was then an investment banker working for Rothschild Inc., helping bondholders negotiate with Trump, whose finances were unraveling. He was longtime head of Rothschild and Company's bankruptcy advisory business in New York. And he said, when somebody asked Wilbur Ross, why did we make a deal with Trump? Ross insisted that Trump was worth saving. The Trump name is still very much an asset. So Trump is a Rothschild asset. And it shows, because look at his overwhelming support, sycophant support of Israel.
I love Israel. I love Israel. I've been with Israel so long in terms of I've received some of my greatest honors from Israel. My father before me, incredible.
My father before me, incredible.
So his father, what is he talking about? My father before me. Reports, this is from the JewishPress.com, report, Trump family donated bigly to Jewish and Israeli causes. Frederick Trump donated the land for the Talmud Torah of the Beach Haven Jewish Center in New York. Fred Trump also made charitable contributions to the Long Island Jewish Hospital, and Trump supported Jewish and Israeli causes and institutions, including the Beach Haven Jewish Center in Flatbush, New York. He significantly supported Israel bond debt securities that trade at high-risk adjusted spread to U.S. Treasury bond issued by the Israeli government. Very interesting. And remember, and also he said they covered up the fact that they were German and said that they were Swedish because he had a lot of Jewish tenants, and it wasn't a good thing to be German in those days around Jewish tenants.
My daughter Ivanka is about to have a beautiful Jewish...
Oh, and I forgot to mention also down here, Trump became, Fred Trump, Trump's dad, became friends with future Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, in the 1980s, while he was the United Nations ambassador.
My daughter Ivanka is about to have a beautiful Jewish baby. I love Israel and honor and respect the Jewish family.
Almost all of Trump's kids have been married to Jewish people, have been married into the tribe. And he seems very proud of it here.
My daughter Ivanka is about to have a beautiful Jewish baby. I love Israel and honor and respect the Jewish faith and tradition. My name is Donald Trump, and I'm a big fan of Israel. The bond between the United States and Israel is absolutely, totally unbreakable. My administration will stand side by side with the Jewish people and Israel's leaders to continue strengthening the bridges that connect not only Jewish Americans and Israelis, but also all Americans and Israelis.
Connecting all Americans and Israelis. So Trump is a Zionist puppet, and it was predicted 10 years before in 2006, Michael Collins Piper book titled The Shocking Story of the Infiltration and Subversion of the American Nationalist Movement, the Judas Goats Leading Us to the Slaughter, Fake Patriots. So he's talking here, he writes in 2006, 10 years before Trump was elected, that Fox News and the alternative right, their controlled opposition, keeping the conservative and traditional American ranks in line, touting the Zionist cause as an American one, a cause that is fully in line with not just making America great again in the image of Ronald Reagan, in reality making America an empire and one that is ruled by the Zionist elite. So the controlled opposition, Fox News, and then now the alternative MAGA internet gurus online listed here. Warning, Zionist, controlled opposition, fake patriot media. See them all, InfoWars, Breitbart, Blaze, PragerU, Daily Wire, Daily Caller, Drudge Report, Right Side Broadcasting, Project Veritas, on and on and on. All of them hardcore Zionist fake patriots. And then he also writes that, which part? Oh, about us being a superpower in the image of Ronald Reagan, but in reality making America an empire, one that is ruled by the Zionist elite. So they want to make America an empire, and there's Netanyahu. Israel welcomes the return of the U.S. superpower under Donald Trump. And why do they welcome that? Because in reality, it is controlled and ruled by the Zionist elite, and that's exactly what we have here in this little graphic that I made. We have the Zionist States of America, United States flag. Instead of 50 stars, we got 50 little Mason symbols with the all-seeing eye pyramid and the seal of Solomon above it, ruling it all. Michael Collins Piper also wrote that the New World Order is nothing more than a long-time Zionist dream of world conquest. And here we go, New York Times, 1940, a New World Order pledged to the Jews. So you've been had, all you wannabe fake America first people, MAGA people, because the Trump train with Pence, Christian Zionist Pence, and Zionist agent Trump, the Trump train is going straight to Israel, literally going straight to Israel, because the Israel minister plans a Trump train station at the Western Wall. I kid you not. Trump train's going straight to Israel. Trump is not making America great again. He's making Israel great again. Trump, make Israel great again. Banners up in Israel. Haaretz says Israelis love Trump more than almost any other nation. Poll shows 69% of Israelis express confidence in Trump. Just 28% in the UK, 30% in Japan. 69% is definitely a higher approval rating than Trump has in America because he's Israel's president. He's a Zionist president, a Zionist stooge. Here he is with Chabad Lubavitch, and of course, like all the other presidents, he goes and makes his pilgrimage to the Western Wall to go pray. Praying deeply. So Michael Collins Piper was right. It is a Zionist cause. And also remember here, he even predicted making America great again, which was Ronald Reagan's slogan. And Trump reused it. And look at the connection with Trump and Reagan, both actors, both Zionist agents. Look at this.
And these are just different magazines. This is a picture with Ronald Reagan that was taken at the White House. And it was he was terrific. I had a very good relationship with him. Not a big relationship because I was young, but he liked me and I liked him.
There's rumors that Reagan predicted that Trump would be president when he was shaking hand, but I guess it's not confirmed. But still, two television personalities, Hollywood actors, becoming president, being handled by a Zionist matrix behind them. The Zionist matrix, like Israel Firster Sheldon Adelson, who is ready, well-known, buys the presidency, is ready to buy the presidency. He's known as the kingmaker. He's the single person to whom both the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, and the President of the United States owe everything. Not the single person. They also owe stuff to Rothschilds and others. But now here is Trump's top campaign contributor. Supposedly Trump is America first, but look who owns him and what his agenda is.
All we care about is being good Zionists, being good citizens of Israel. All we care about is being good Zionists, good citizens of Israel.
Does that sound America first to you? Good Zionists, good citizens of Israel? Sheldon Adelson is all Israel all the time. He's an Israel firster. He has one public policy issue on his agenda, Israel. And Adelson gave Trump $100 million plus $5 million more for the inauguration to sit right behind the president, where the rabbi talked about Jerusalem in the inauguration of Trump. Adelson was reportedly disappointed with Trump over Jerusalem embassy move delay. He was furious that Trump didn't move it immediately. And then Trump, of course, hurried it up and got it built as soon as he could. Sheldon Adelson even offered to pay for it. And, of course, we know that the embassy is just a cover for rebuilding the temple and controlling that area. The Times of Israel, Adelson said to hail Trump as likely, quote, the best president for Israel ever. 100 days, a new Jewish elite rises under Trump. The New Yorker, Donald Trump's New World Order. Trump is headed to the White House. Did we just elect our first Jewish president? That's Fox News. Trust me, by almost every possible measurement, we've just elected our first Jewish president. It's funny, I have people that actually tell me that Trump's not a Zionist. Talk about delusional. I mean, this isn't even a secret. Haaretz, Republican Jewish Coalition chairman, says its members are, quote, thrilled with Trump. Tablet, Trump's Jews. Meet the Jews in Trump's inner circle. There's a lot of them. Lauder versus Adelson. Which Jewish billionaire has Trump's ear on Israel? Wall Street Journal. Trump names Michael Glassner to oversee campaign. APEC. A former APEC director is running Trump's campaign. APEC's Southwest Regional Direction a year ago is now running Donald Trump's national political operation today. APEC ran Trump's campaign, And then now we got this congresswoman saying that AIPAC has influence, and everybody's screaming that she's an anti-Semite. Everybody knows AIPAC wields incredible influence. Here's Michael Glassner, Donald Trump for president, formerly AIPAC. And then Trump also meets with Ari Emanuel, the hotshot Hollywood agent, brother to Rahm Emanuel, former Chicago mayor and former Obama chief of staff of Israeli Mossad agents, sons of Mossad agents. It was Trump's agent as well. And he goes and meets with him before he picks his cabinet. Very, very interesting. So what does the future world, or the end times prophecy look like of these Talmudic Chabad Lubavitchers? Well, the kingdom of Israel, extremist rabbis dream of a Jewish monarchy with a special role for non-Jews. And it's not good. It is not good. It's their secret aspirations of the most extremist settlers. The compendium is devoted entirely to laws pertaining to the public in the kingdom. In other words, to the establishment of a religious Jewish monarchy that will replace secular democracy in Israel. It describes a world in which the king is omnipotent, owning slaves and handmaidens, a world in which Jews have extra rights and non-Jews cannot hold public office, a world in which there is no private property, everything belongs to the king, their Moshiach, and rebels are put to death. Remember that, rebels are put to death. They claim, oh, it's just theoretical, but this is what they really believe. And it talks about, it detailed the laws that permit the killing of non-Jews under different circumstances, such as during wartime or when a non-Jew threatens a Jew. What does threaten mean? It's saying anything negative at all whatsoever, or just objecting to their insane schemes. The new volume gives a set of totally dystopian laws that will prevail in the kingdom of Israel. It discusses how the king will be chosen, what his rights will be, and what rights, if any, his subjects will have. And from the same book where we got the letter from the rabbi written to Rothschild about rebuilding the temple, it's written by Ari Morgenstern. It's called Hastening Redemption, Messianism and the Resettlement of the Land of Israel. And look at what he writes here. Settling the land of Israel and rebuilding Jerusalem. Redemption of the land was the highest concern of the Vilna Gaon's disciples. They saw it as the main focus of human activity during the decisive first stage of the redemption and as the mechanism through which the Shekinah, which means the dwelling for their God, would be raised from the ashes. Just like Modest Yahu, the Chabad Lubavitch rapper I've done videos on, he sings, it's not about the land or the sea, it's all about the dwelling for his majesty, for the Moshiach. It's not about Israel, it's about the temple and ruling the world with their Messiah. So, settlement of the land of Israel was not a means to promote Jewish political freedom or economic prosperity, but an end in itself, so that the third temple might be built and all humanity brought to acknowledge the dominion of the King, King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. So the whole world must acknowledge their Moshiach. In the early letter from Kokel, the Prushim signed, it would be followed an ingathering of the dispersed Jews and restoration of the temple service in Jerusalem. Then will the ruins of the two destructions be filled with the third temple, which will surpass its predecessors in glory, and then be dispersed of Israel, will be gathered from the four corners, and his name will be exalted and sanctified over all. When all flesh come to bow down before him, the whole world must acknowledge their Moshiach. The writers see revitalization of the land as the important step, with the act of Aliyah as the mechanism for awakening the land. So Aliyah, Breaking Israel News has already done articles that the messianic tipping point has been reached. There's the majority of Jews in the world are living in Israel, so it's the messianic times. So we got Times of Israel, some more supremacy, racism, and how they think of us as cattle and here to serve them. It's the purpose of Gentiles to serve Jews. This is from Ovadia Yosef, the chief rabbi, the Sephardic rabbi. Goyim were born only to serve us. Without that, they have no place in the world, only to serve the people of Israel. That's one controversial quote. Another one, quote, in Israel, death has no dominion over them. With Gentiles, it will be like any person. They need to die, but God will give them longevity. Why? Imagine that one's donkey would die. They'd lose their money. So we're just their donkeys here to work for them. Quote, this is his servant. That's why he gets a long life, to work well with this Jew. Work well for this Jew. Why are Gentiles needed? They will work, they will plow, they will reap. Why we will sit and eat. That is why Gentiles were created. Such sickening supremacist stuff. The ADL doesn't speak out about that, though. They only attack me for exposing their supremacy. Chabad rabbi says, destroy their holy sites, kill men, women, and children, and cattle. Newsweek, Jews are the smartest race in the world and superior humans, Israeli lawmaker claims. So supremacist. And here's Chabad. Isn't it racist to believe that Jews are special? Well, do we leave room for others? The righteous of the nations have a share in the world to come, but there's no need to become one of us. They don't want us to become one of us. Sure, there are some basic rules, but they are rules that leave much leeway, and mostly rules basic to the stability of healthy society. Keep those rules. So Chabad is saying, keep our rules, and we don't care who you are in. Well, what happens if you don't keep the rules? And what are the rules? Well, WorldNet Daily, 7 days until dedication of Third Temple altar, where they lit up some pallet boards on the altar. 70 nations invited to Jerusalem to do this Sanhedrin declaration for the Third Temple altar. They want to replace the UN. Some more of them talking about replacing the UN. And that's from WorldNet Daily, founded by Joseph Farah. He says, why am I an Arab Christian Zionist? Another Christian Zionist from the Zionist Organization of America gave him an award. He won the ZOA Outstanding Journalism Concerning Israel and the Jewish People. Joseph Farah, not America First. That's where Jerome Corsi is out of. And here we have Stein, the secretary of the Sanhedrin, says the need to replace the United Nations. The United Nations has failed in its mandate by rejecting God as the creator and the Noahide laws common to all mankind. So what do they say the Noahide laws are? Well, the most disturbing one is blessing Hashem, respecting the creator and the sages who are familiar with his Torah, and respecting the places of worship where the Torah is learned and prayers are recited to him. It is forbidden, God forbid, to speak harshly against them or to curse them. So hear that. It is forbidden to speak harshly against their God, their Moshiach, the sages, the rabbis, the temple, the Torah, any of their places of worship, their prayers, all of it. It's forbidden. And what is the punishment if we speak out against that? We hear the 7 laws of Noah, Wikipedia. And what is the punishment? Chabad says the punishment is, Chabad is all about pushing this too. Maimonides stated that God commanded Moses to compel the world to accept these 7 commandments. In 1983, Rabbi Schneerson of Chabad Lubavitch urged his followers to actively engage in activities to inform non-Jews about these 7 commandments, which had not been done in previous generations. So Maimonides, and I know I'm pronouncing that wrong still, he said that Gentiles may have a part in the world to come just by observing Noahide laws and accept it as given by Moses. And are different from the children of Noah, who only keep the 7 laws out of moral, ethical reasoning alone. So all of the Gentiles must follow the Noahide laws according to Chabad Lubavitch. And the punishment if they don't. The Talmud lists the punishment for blaspheming the ineffable name of God as death. So speaking out against any of the stuff I listed is death. The sons of Noah are to be executed by decapitation for most crimes. Remember that. The punishment is death. Maimonides states that anyone who does not accept the 7 laws is to be executed, as God compelled the world to follow these laws. Is that not disturbing? And here's another, I'm not 100% sure if this is legit, but it says, and the Gentiles in their stupidity have proved easier dupes than we expected them to be. When one would expect more intelligence and more practical common sense, but they are no better than a herd of sheep. Let them graze in our fields till they become fat enough to be worthy of being immolated to our future king of the world. 1936 B'nai B'rith speech in Paris. And this word immolated to their future king of the world, to their Moshiach, well, immolate means kill or offer as a sacrifice, especially by burning on the altar, maybe. Kind of like they were doing in the totally Jewish Game of Thrones, burning people at the stake. And this quote, although it seems unbelievable, they claim it's from 1936, B'nai B'rith Convention in Paris, and it was reported in the London Catholic Gazette in 1936. This quote about let them graze in our fields. And it also says, interesting, one of the many triumphs of our Freemasonry is that those Gentiles who become members of our lodges should never suspect that we are using them to build their own jails, upon whose terraces we shall erect the throne of our universal King of the Jews, and should never know that we are commanding them to forge the chains of their own servility to our future King of the world. I mean, maybe this is not true. It seems like it's sourced, but it seems to match up with all the rest of the info. So when you ask a member of the Sanhedrin, the rabbi of the Sanhedrin in Israel, what happens to us, he doesn't even give you a straight answer because he lies.
What would happen to Christians who refuse this Messiah and hold on to Jesus?
Is that what we'd say? We would say, I don't know, I'm not the Messiah.
So that's a way of not asking the question. And this is from RSE. It's a YouTube channel that's covering a bunch of this stuff, doing a pretty good job with some great interviews. So this is his answer. He's not going to tell you, even though I already showed you, it's decapitation. The punishment is death.
We would say, I don't know, I'm not the Messiah.
Liar. And then we have Haaretz, Netanyahu, and the laws of killing, quote, Goyim. Israel's becoming a racist society in which the prime minister of a country that was founded after the murder of Jews salutes a rabbi who supported a work on the laws of killing non-Jews. So Netanyahu supporting a rabbi that talks about killing Goyim. And when Bill Maher asked Netanyahu about what's going to happen in the end days, because the Jews believe that the Moshiach is going to come and rule, and the Christian Zionists think that Jesus is going to come and destroy the Moshiach, which is the Antichrist, Bill Maher goes, what's going to happen? Here's Netanyahu's non-answer.
I would agree with you that the people in Iran and many other Muslim countries are much too comfortable with the idea of the world coming to an end, but so are some of Israel's greatest supporters. Does it not make you a bit uncomfortable that the Christian right here in America, which backs Israel fervently, really does so because they think Jesus is going to return? Many of them believe he will do so in their lifetime. And when Jesus returns, he must return to whence he came. And what he's going to do when he gets there, basically, is convert all the Jews or kill them.
Well, you know, let's argue about that point when it happens, right? But
so let's argue about it when it happens. In other words, not a straight answer, and we can look up what they have planned for the Gentiles that don't go along with their Noahide laws. And you say, oh, Noahide laws, what are those? You know, those don't apply here. Well, look at this. Wikipedia, Education and Sharing Day. Education and Sharing Day is a day established by the United States Congress in honor of the Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. It calls on an increased focus on education. Since 1978, Education and Sharing Day USA has been proclaimed annually by the president on the Rebbe's Jewish calendar birthday, the 11th of Nisan, which I just learned recently that Nissan, like the car company, is Jewish. In history, in 1978, the U.S. Congress asked President Carter to designate Rebbe's birthday as the national day. So it's actually law. In 1978, Congress asked President Carter to do this. And Ronald Reagan wrote in 1982 that Rebbe Schneerson, a worldwide spiritual leader, he has provided a vivid example of the eternal validity of the 7 Noahide laws, a moral code for all of us, regardless of religious faith. So they're pushing Noahide laws as law, literally written into law. And it's called in recognition of Lubavitcher Rebbe's 80th birthday, the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States and Congress assembled have issued House Joint Resolution 447 to set aside April 4th, 1982 as National Day of Reflection. So the Rebbe has National Day of Reflection and Education Day, all pushing the Noahide laws. And we have the 1991 bill described the Noahide laws as the, quote, ethical values and principles which are the basis of civilized society and upon which our great nation was founded. So we're founded on these laws according to George Bush, who signed this into law in 1991. There's Reagan, and all the presidents do this. Here's Reagan with Chabad Lubavitch and the Rebbe. Here's Reagan again with the menorah and the Rebbe Schneerson. Here's George Bush Sr. surrounded by the Rebbe, signing Education Day into law, possibly implementing Noahide laws they can enact later down the line. Here's Bill Clinton with the Rebbe Schneerson wearing his yarmulke. And here is Bush Jr. signing something with Chabad Lubavitch around him. Obama as well with Chabad Lubavitch. And of course, Trump. And the Sanhedrin calls on President Trump to uphold the 7 Noahide laws. Not good. And they are implementing them. These laws are slowly being implemented. Hurricane victims must support Israel to get relief, Texas City demands. So American citizens are having to pledge oaths to a foreign nation in order to receive emergency funds. Politico says Trump administration adopts new definition of anti-Semitism in schools. Trump embraces a dangerously broad definition of anti-Semitism. They're changing what it means to be anti-Semitism. Pretty much it's any criticism at all whatsoever is considered hate speech, anti-Semitism, and a conspiracy theory. We got House panel approves bills on anti-Semitism envoy, combating genocide. The ADL, of course, approves of this. The House passes bill raising level of anti-Semitism envoy to position of ambassador. Trump filled the position recently with Elon Carr, who was funded by Sheldon Adelson $100,000 for his 2016 LA County Supervisor campaign. So another Sheldon Adelson Zionist puppet is in charge of anti-Semitism now. We got the U.S. State Department website .gov monitoring and combating anti-Semitism. Special envoy for all the anti-Semitism. They're pushing is legislation to stop our free speech of criticizing Israel and boycotting the Free Speech and Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. Democrats, the Senate just passed, or here, I'll back up. Obama signs anti-BDS bill into law for the EU. We got this new bill, Congress.gov, House Res 72, rejecting anti-Israel and anti-Semitic hatred in the United States and around the world. That means any criticism at all whatsoever. Here's just recently Marco Rubio, another Sheldon Adelson puppet. Senate passes Rubio bill to let states boycott businesses that discriminate against Israel. So private companies decide that they want to support BDS and not do business with Israel. State and local governments, which are controlled by Masons and you know who else, they're going to say, no, you don't get the contract, and only hand out the contracts to the pro-Israel companies, giving them monopolies and putting all the non-Israel supporters out of business. Systematically, shameful, criminal. This can never pass. And then just recently, Rep. Maloney announces historic bipartisan legislation on more Holocaust mandatory education. So they're trying to redefine what it means to be anti-Semitic. ADL, what is anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, and anti-Zionist? Well, they basically say it's anything. Anything at all. They go, sure, you can criticize, but then they go on and say that you can't say that they're racist, that Israel is racist at all. You can't use any symbols. Like I can't use a Star of David, even though that's the symbol that is used to label and describe Israel and Zionism. It's on their flag, but we can't use it. And images or theories. So as long they can call anything we say a conspiracy theory, and then it's anti-Semitic here. Theories. Theories are used. And then the State Department also has defining anti-Semitism. They have all these clauses. I've covered it before. You can go read them at all. But they can't use, it's anti-Semitism to say that Jews control the media, economy, government, or anything, any societal institution. I mean, what if they do? What if they do? We're not allowed to do it. And it just goes on, all these other things. You can't question their loyalty to Israel. You can't say that Israel is racist. You can't compare them to Nazis. And then they throw in their anti-Semitic acts are criminal. All they got to do is change a law, and this will be the new definition of anti-Semitism. Now remember, Trump, Tree of Life, where this all started, down this rabbit hole. The Kabbalah, Tree of Life, Talmudic, Chabad Lubavitch Award he got in 1983, showing he's a total Zionist puppet. He got the award, Tree of Life Award. What does that remind you of?
And this is the Tree of Life, which is a very big award in terms of everything that I stand for. It means so much to me. And a lot of times I'll have friends of mine come in, Jewish, and they will see the Tree of
Everything he stands for, the Tree of Life Award. And then who would have guessed that the big crackdown on anti-Semitism would come on an attack on a synagogue called the Tree of Life Synagogue? Which, by the way, breaking news today, February 11th, CNN, Tree of Life shooting suspect arraigned and pleads not guilty. I suppose that just means not guilty to some of the charges, because if he's saying that he didn't do the shooting at all, that's interesting, especially considering this little bit of tidbit of information here. Late last year, famed defense or infamous defense attorney Judy Clark, who defended the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski and Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Zarnev, took over Bauer's case. So the same lawyer that was in charge of the Unabomber and the Boston bomber, two other suspected disingenuous attacks. Interesting that the same lawyer there, so read into that however you like. And then after the shooting at the synagogue, Trump's response, believe it or not, war on anti-Semitism and the death penalty for anti-Semites. Here's the clip.
The monstrous killing of Jewish Americans at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You've all seen it. You've been watching it. It's horrible. This evil anti-Semitic attack is an assault on all of us. It's an assault on humanity. It will require all of us working together to extract the hateful poison of anti-Semitism from our world. This was an anti-Semitic attack at its worst. The scourge of anti-Semitism cannot be ignored, cannot be tolerated, and it cannot be allowed to continue. We can't allow it to continue. It must be confronted and condemned everywhere it rears its very ugly head. We must stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters to defeat anti-Semitism and vanquish the forces of hate. That's what it is. Through the centuries, the Jews have endured terrible persecution, and you know that. We've all read it, we've studied it. They've gone through a lot. And those seeking their destruction, we will seek their destruction. And when you have crimes like this, whether it's this one or another one on another group, we have to bring back the death penalty. They have to pay the ultimate price. They have to pay the ultimate price. They can't do this. They can't do this to our country. We must draw a line in the sand and say very strongly, never again.
So there you have it. That's the end. Public enemy number one is anti-Semitism. Trump says they're going to destroy anti-Semitism, and it just so happened to be the Tree of Life. Look at the big picture. Look at all of the other information and put them together and think about it. I remember hearing that in the Soviet Union, the Bolsheviks, they made it a law that you went to jail or I believe punishable by death for quote-unquote anti-Semitism. And look at Trump, public enemy number one, anti-Semitism. We have to defeat it anywhere it is. The crackdown is coming. It's coming fast. They've already incrementally gone so far. And he brought up the death penalty too. Connecting the death penalty and anti-Semitism, it's scary. It seems like it's got Noahide laws is the underlying agenda. And this third temple, end times prophecy, Christian Zionist, Masonic, Jewish third temple cult is just absolutely out of control. Thanks everybody for watching. I am Adam Green with No More News. Please like, share, subscribe. This is very important information. I documented it all. It's not my theory. This is not baseless conspiracy theory. It's all 100% verifiable and sourceable. Share this video with your friends. Sign up for the email list if you like to support this kind of content and keep me going. Donate with a couple dollars a month on PayPal or Patreon. And check out my documentary, God's Chosen People, available here at nomorenews.org, to my BitChute. And just stay vigilant. Share this info and speak out to everybody about this, because it is the most important thing going on, and it has a very, very dangerous future if we don't put an end to this and at least expose it. So thanks guys for watching. Adam Green here with No More News. That's all for now. See you in the next video.